What is something about yourself that sounds totally made up but is 100% real? My dad's name is Luigi and my uncle's name is Mario. They are brothers, ETA. I forgot to add that my dad is also a plumber. I built a 13-foot-tall T-Rex with Christopher Walken's head, and New York Magazine called it highbrow and brilliant. I never graduated high school but I have a bachelor's degree. I was homeschooled and my mom never went through the legal steps to actually get me a real diploma, so she made one in Photoshop that was then used to get me into this podunk community college that didn't verify it. From there I got my associate's degree, which I then used to get into a decent university where I got my bachelor's. I was once sponsored by the Crunk Energy Drink Company for sailing. I imagine I was the only sailor on their list. I literally just emailed them saying that I sailed and asked if they wanted me to put stickers on my boat. They sent me a few cases of the drink, t-shirts, hats, the works. My car was known as the Crunk Mobile. I took my mother for a surprise trip to NYC. She got married to my father there in '68. The surprise was manufactured by way of telling her we were going to Australia. We live in New Zealand, so a trip to Australia is not a huge deal. It's the type of thing you could do for the weekend, and therefore she packed a bag and brought her passport. We got to the airport and said, "Surprise, we're going to New York," and she cried her eyes out with delight. When we arrived, on our first morning, I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" She said, "When I was last here, in 1968, the Twin Towers weren't complete, so I'd like to go to the top of them. Your wish is my command," I said, and off we went to the WTC. That was the afternoon of September 10, 2001. Suffice it to say, there was a particular poignancy when we looked out the window at around 8 a.m. the next morning. I am allergic to lettuce, like I carry an EpiPen allergic. I was at a store when Tony Hawk was signing autographs. I was only 10 at the time and was a huge fan. One of his early video games had just come out. The store had a couple TVs on the wall and some video games to play. Being a kid, I waited for one controller to open up and someone leave. A kid ended up leaving and I grabbed the controller and started playing and minding my own business. A couple minutes later the store wanted to grab photos of Tony playing his own video game. He came over and grabbed the second controller and began to play multiplayer with me. Probably played for 10 minutes. The bonus was it was also my 10th birthday, so I played Tony Hawk Pro Skater with Tony Hawk. I saw the former Prime Minister of Poland in his underwear. Once in college I applied for a job at the library help desk. I figured I would help people find books. Didn't give it much more thought than that. During the interview, I aced all of the customer service questions. Then they asked me whether I knew how to defrag a hard drive. Cue alarm bells in my head, but I kept calm outwardly and said no. "But you can teach me." I worked in IT for 3 years by accident. They were too nice to fire me. I found out my father wasn't my biological father in 10th grade biology class. We were learning about blood types and traits. I raised my hand thinking I was a smartass. "Your chart isn't accurate. My dad has AB negative and I'm O positive." My teacher said, "I think your mom has some explaining to do," and we all chuckled. Turned out, he was not my father. My husband, I'm 30, has been my best friend since I was 7. He was the new kid at school and I walked up to him and said, "We are going to be best friends." He said, "No we aren't, leave me alone." I bugged him every day for 2 weeks before he finally said, "If I'll be your friend, will you shut up about it?" We were married 20 years later. Proved his ass wrong. A horse threw me in the air when I was a child, but I wasn't on his back. He grabbed the skin of my back with his teeth and yeeted me. My dad kidnapped me and took me to Singapore for very malicious purposes. I'm sure you could imagine. I was 15 and my dad literally had fake documents and suitcases filled with random clothes. When we got there we went to a sketchy hotel and after 15 minutes he went to the bar. A bit after that, some guy just walks in. I was confused but he began muttering saying I was too pale and too old and he left. I called my dad but he didn't answer, so I climbed out through the window and went to the police. They put me on a plane home that same hour. I don't really tell people because it's a bit of a crazy story and sounds made up, hence why it's here, but yeah. I was a rocket scientist. I worked on the 114 AGM. The science was verifying rocket bodies. The backbone of science is to repeat experiments. My job was to make sure we were gonna get the same result every time. People call me a liar all the time because the idea of a rocket scientist is Von Braun. When I was a kid, I woke up to find my cat giving birth to her kittens on my pillow, 1 inch from my face. I took it as a compliment. One of my ancestors was dumb and bought one of Napoleon's doorknobs. It turns out it's fake. Doorknobs were invented after Napoleon died. I survived a plane crash in the desert, trapped there for 2 days, and was rescued by 2 dudes who were trying to bet if they can cook an egg in the sand. At age 50-odd and with limited to no video game experience, my mother completed Mario 64 before I did, in about half the time it finally took me to do it. A pelican engulfed my head with its massive fucking beak when I was a small child. Pelicans are cunts. I had my tongue surgically enhanced for more reach and flexibility when I was 8. I won 2 TV game shows, The $10,000 Pyramid, won $10,300, in 1975, and Sale of the Century, was on the show for 9 days, won $34,000 in cash and prizes, in 85. I lost my heel in a lawnmower accident. Edit, here's the story. I was 4 at the time and I won't say who exactly did it, but he was mowing and it was a riding mower and the hitch on the back where you can hook a little trailer. I love to stand on that part and ride. Well, this time I saw a frog in the grass and being the 4-year-old I was at the time, I jumped off the mower and onto the grass and put my hands over the frog to catch it and he didn't realize I had jumped off and he backed up. My great-grandfather worked in the textile business and started importing rayon fabric from Japan in the late 60s and 70s. Keep in mind this was during the early days of synthetic fabrics and traveling to Japan was not all that common. On a business trip, he met some Japanese businessmen who were selling newly designed transistor radios. His contacts wanted to set up an exclusive import agreement for their electronics to North America, but my great-grandfather declined, because how many of these radios could you possibly sell? Turns out that was a short-sighted business decision, because that company was called Sony Electronics. He turned down the exclusive import contract for Sony. On the other side of my family, my Canadian relatives walked away from 100 acres of land in Alberta during the Dust Bowl and Great Depression. They decided it was not worth paying the taxes on their land. Turns out that land was right in the heart of the Alberta oil deposits, also on my mother's side of the family. They used to have a citrus orchard near Los Angeles. They sold it cheap to some land developers. That farm was right at Hollywood and Vine. My family on both sides is bad at seeing long-term investments. I once drove a locomotive backwards through the Canadian Rockies. Arrested and spent 3 days in a holding cell for a crime that I didn't commit, about a year after the whole matter was done and dusted with. Mind you, I say didn't commit the crime, but I was involved in the story from start to finish. What was the crime you were accused of? My wife, then girlfriend, and I eloped. We crossed over 3 states in India over a 5-day period to get married. My father-in-law, then mortal nemesis, is a well-connected man. He got in touch with his contacts in the police department to try and get a hold of us and filed a formal complaint as part of due process. Long story short, we got married. The rather inept police couldn't find a couple of 21-year-olds. Over the next 4 months, all of it was sorted out. First, we were vilified, then the parents were mollified, etc., etc. But in the beautiful ending to that story, my father-in-law forgot to retract his complaint. Proceed to our first wedding anniversary and we were taking a flight out of the country for a celebratory vacation, from Bombay Airport, India to Dubai Airport, the United Arab Emirates. I was flagged at immigration and was taken across to a cell where I was duly arrested. My crime, kidnapping. I was being accused of having kidnapped the lady I was now married to, taken to a cell. Whilst my wife tried to explain the misunderstanding, one cunt of a cop told her, "Madam, don't worry, we know how Stockholm Syndrome works. You are safe now," etc. And this was on a Friday evening. Due judicial process was followed and I was released by the judge on the following Monday. Hell of a story to share with people when we include all the details of the planning and execution. Edit. We marked our 10th anniversary on the 12th of this month and the 9th anniversary of me getting my ass hauled to jail. When my mom was in grad school she took several labs where she worked with cadavers. Because my dad worked nights she often had to take me to class with her, and she'd usually just plunk me down on the table with the cadaver while she worked on it. I ran out of gas outside of La Paz, Bolivia. Luckily it was downhill for about 6 kilometers into the city. I coasted the whole way on my motorbike, past buses and drifted into a gas station, never missed a beat. I once successfully ran an unfunded shelter for 100 homeless veterans as a homeless civilian. I've literally never been sick, or at least never showed symptoms of being sick. No colds, no fevers, no viruses, no flu even. I really don't know what it's like to be sick or get sick, and frankly, I hope I never do. it'd sure be ironic if the first time I got sick was now. Edit, I'm 30 years old by the way, that was probably worth mentioning. I've been in 3 fatal train accidents, never had a scratch. I once fell over a chair during a massive bar fight, in the process kicking a German Marine out of second-story windows in the middle of downtown Queensland. Nobody knows why I'm half blind, not even who. I went blind in my left eye when I was 7, my optic nerve atrophied, there is no explanation as to why. I have had everything tested, and my body was at the time, completely normal. I've had plenty of tests, met far too many experts, I've had several specialists come to hospitals near me to inspect me and all sorts, and I've had far too many tests and the answer is, well, it just happened, we guess. There's plenty more, my life kind of reads like some kind of awful sitcom or something, but the eye thing is the easiest to digest. Edit, about the who bit, at one point the guy in charge of looking after me etc., took my file to a WHO conference or something and came back with a load of blanks. Fun. I cannot taste any salt whatsoever. Edit, for people asking, it's a brain thing, food tastes bland, salted chips taste plain, and even not had any British food. Edit 2, I can still taste other spices and herbs, no it what come tastes like, sorry to put you on blast dude but that's weird, salt water just tastes bad, MSG and other sodium-based things just make me gag, getting on Xbox, Overwatch, etc. doesn't help but I can smell the salt. My ex and I were having a huge argument in a hotel parking lot, my friend and ex's dad were there as witnesses, 2 big buses pulled up and Justin Bieber got off one of them with a security guard and walked right past us. I was crying and my ex was yelling at me and JB said, and I quote, "Hey, stop that," my ex yelled back at him, "White PPL shouldn't have dreads," and Justin just got onto the other bus his guard. My friend was cracking up saying, was that Justin Bieber, and sure enough, some people in his entourage or whatever were staying at that hotel and he was in town that night for a concert. TLDR, Justin Bieber told my ex to stop yelling at me, and then my ex yelled at him.